going on? RGIJ is back, baby. Listeners and viewers, welcome to another episode of the regular G.I. Joe podcast. Mike and I are joined today by one of my dearest, closest friends, a veteran. He and I were stationed together up in Travis. He's a Command Post Controller X, but he's also coming on to share basically the obstacles that he faced, the demons that he dealt with, but overall how he is now living a life of sobriety and basically overcame those demons. So Mike and I are really, really glad to have you on. Welcome, Matthew Porter, a.k.a. Matt. How's it going, Matt?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good. So as I was telling Mike before, you and I served together over in Travis. We're in the command post. So I want to know, like for me, it was my three older brothers joined. So I basically followed their path as well. Some other guests that we had on, they had family members that were military and everything else that sort of persuaded them to join. So why don't you share as to why you joined the Air Force?
Okay. Why did I join the Air Force? So I didn't have any family in the military. I had a grandfather that was in the Marines. It was never really brought to my attention until I got a little bit older. I think my dad brought it up, when I graduated high school, because I didn't have plans for college. I wasn't doing very good. I barely made it out of high school, I wasn't in the right state of mind to go in the military at 18. So from like 18 to 21, it was always kind of it was always something maybe I thought about. I mean, I played team sports, right, when I was a kid. So being a team player, being a part of something, that was always cool. I remember when I started to talk to people about joining, they said, well, you're gonna have to learn how to live out of a bag, right? Well, my parents were divorced, so for 4 years, for custody, I lived out of a bag, right? I was going back and forth, constantly in and out of a bag. So that was never really an issue for me. By the time I decided to join, I was kind of out of options personally. It was the way that I was living, the way that things were going. I needed a change, and I went and talked to the recruiter. And like I said, I was lifting weights. I was always into sports. Basic training didn't really scare me. Any type of physical. The whole. You got to make it through basic, and that wasn't it. I didn't worry about that. What I was excited about was, just being a part of a team. It was a big change. It was a complete career move. At the time, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And it was 2000. It was 1999. So we were in peacetime. There wasn't any war. There was nothing going on. It was a good time to get in. And so it was kind of a no-brainer when it came to what branch to go in. It was going to be the Air Force. Based on I think the recruiter really, it was just a good team. I don't know. I liked blue. Blue looked good. I looked good in blue. But no, that was really it. By that time, it was time for me to make a decision. And when it was military, it was just Air Force.
So now, once you pass basic training, you get stationed to Cali because you're originally from Vegas. So what was that? How was that experience being stationed in Cali?
California was cool. So I was originally supposed to be, what is that? Warfare ops, whatever. I don't know, the warfare stuff on the plane. And I washed out. So that was electronics, electronic warfare.
So, yeah.
Electronic warfare. I couldn't grasp it. I don't know, something about electronic school.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Just didn't work out. So I washed out, and they put me with command post because my comm score was was actually the highest, right above my electronic score. So, so they, I get through that in Mississippi. I'm at Keesler doing my thing. I was originally supposed to go to Florida, got reclassed. And then I get Travis, and it was cool. I mean, I'd been to Southern California, not Northern California. Close enough to Vegas. I liked it because we were right there by San Francisco. It was cool, but I was partying a lot. It was cool. I didn't go to San Francisco nearly as much as I think I should have, being so close. But I liked it. I mean, I liked Northern California. The base was cool, good sized base. I mean, we had everything we needed there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool.
It was funny because the first time I met Matt, I'm in the dorm room and his sponsor tells him, hey, go meet up with this guy named Devalle. He's in this dorm room. Go meet up with him, connect with him, and then come to my house because I'm having a little, party in my house. So his sponsor calls me, goes, yo, Izzy, this guy named Matt, the new guy's coming. He's, bring him over to the house so we go hang out. And I said, okay. So all of a sudden I'm watching TV, listening to music, and I hear a knock on the door. So I, in those times, the dorms, they had a little peephole. So I look through the peephole and I don't see nobody there knocking. So I hear the knock again. So finally I open the door and here's Matt's like, what, 5'2", 5'3", something like that. He's small. So he comes in and he's like, of course his physique at the time was much skinnier. And I opened the door and he was like, hey, what's up, man? My name's Matt. And I was like, oh, cool. What's up, man? My name's Izzy. And he comes in. He goes, oh, where you from? I was like, oh, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. First thing, oh, you like Wu-Tang? Like automatically stereotyping. And I'm like, what does that mean? He was like, oh, Brooklyn, I like Wu-Tang, this and that. So from there, we clicked up and everything else. So in the time that you were in the military, we talked to Heidi before. You got a chance to deploy. Were you also in Cali when September 11th happened?
Yeah.
Did you go anywhere? Did you deploy?
You were at work.
I was in Saudi, yeah.
Oh, no.
I was in Saudi when
you were,
September 11th happened.
So I was in the dorm room. So 9/11, we had a party the night before in my room. So we're partying. Everyone goes to bed. Everyone goes home. The morning of September 11th, our buddy Chris calls me on the phone. It's 6 a.m. California time, right? 9 a.m. New York time. Calls me and he's like, it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to war. They attacked us. And I'm like, dude, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, we partied last night. I'm like, why are you calling me? Right, so I hung up the phone. I hung up on him and he calls back. And as soon as I pick up the phone, there's a knock at my door. And I get up, I hang up the phone, I get up and I open the door and it was Kyle from around the corner. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, it's going on. Like he was freaking out. So I get dressed. I walk around the corner in the dorms to his room. There's like 10 other airmen in there and they're all watching the TV. He was the only one with, I think he had cable TV or something, he had network TV.
Right.
And that's when we were watching it. And then we called work, we didn't know what to do. The rest is history, man. That was when, I was deployed 10 days later to Diego. That was,
right.
that was, so you weren't there. And then I think, because I think you came back and then I left, right? I didn't even get to see you, I think, when we were deployed.
Yeah. Once you got deployed and I got back, you came back after later on when I was already present. So now you did mention a lot of partying. What did that entail? What consisted a lot of partying?
So let me back up, right? So prior to the military, because I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I needed to know where all this, where this whole addiction, where this stemmed from, right? Okay. So growing up, like you said, when I came to your door, right, I was short, right? I'm not tall, still not tall.
Right.
So as a kid, I was the smallest kid in my school. I in seventh grade, I was 4'5". I wore a size 3.5 shoe. I was left-handed. I had a speech impediment, and I wore glasses, and I had a mullet. Like everything you could imagine, problematic. I dealt with, right?
Right.
So early on in life, like I said, I played sports. Well, when I got into high school, that's when I quit playing sports. So I lost my identity as an athlete, right? I start hanging out with kids who don't play sports. So I lose my identity. I'm still this small kid. I'm being, I'm constantly being reminded. I wasn't bullied, but I was reminded, right, that I was a small kid, right? So as a teenager, early on, I started to already build this foundation of insecurities. And I never knew what it was, right? Looking back, I was like, why did I start doing the things that I did? Well, I had these insecurities that I took with me into high school. So when I get into high school, and then you start introducing, the substances and the alcohol, then it made it okay, right? I had this security blanket that I could deal with everything because I was partying, right? I was part of the crew. I could drink like everyone. I could smoke like everyone. I kind of invented a new identity, right? As this little partier, got my sense of humor, right? Like the funny short guy, talking shit, this and that, just making my way. So when I went into the military, like I said, I wasn't worried about basic training, but I'm going to be honest with you. In the back of my mind, I was 21 years old. So I knew, hey, if I make it through basic training, I can drink, right? As soon as I get to tech school, sooner or later, I'll be able to drink. I'm 21, good to go. So I hate to say that was a driving force that got me through basic training, but I would be lying if I told you that wasn't the light at the end of the tunnel, right? That was something I was looking forward to. Right. So when I get into the military, and it's party central, right? You're in the dorms. It's a party all the time. That way of thinking and that way of life came right back in. So I get to tech school the first night that you're able to go out and drink, right? I went out and I drank like I used to always drink. Came home, threw up all over my room in the dorms. And that was when in tech school, right? You had those metal garbage cans, remember, from school? Yeah. Well, they weren't sealed, right? Right. So I throw up in my garbage can, and in the morning, it all had drained out. So it's all over my floor, and here I am, right? And I'm like, but we're good, right? Like I made it. I'm in tech school. Everything is. So I cleaned it up, not even thinking, just like, hey, I twisted one off last night, drank a little bit too much, but that's where I was, man. I was right back into that state of mind where everything was okay. So by the time we get to Travis, first duty station, you seek out those people that are gonna, that party. It's like I tell people now, man, if you go looking for the devil, you will find him. I promise you. Absolutely. And if you seek out those people, you're gonna find them. And so I'll speak more on that, but that was the scene. It was, we worked hard, we partied hard. Before 9/11, that's all you did. You go to work and we drink. I mean, I was just known as, it was, I had the party room. It's just what it was. So for you to ask what that entailed a daily lifestyle of drinking, not I wasn't a liquor drinker. I wasn't drinking by myself. But if I got off work, if I got off a night shift at 7 a.m., I'm drinking a beer at 7 a.m., right? Because work is done. So that didn't matter. I was going to work every day and I was drinking. And that's how that was. And it continued, the entire time. So as soon as I could drink out of basic, I was drinking. And that's just the normal. I didn't know any different.
So when you say addiction, when that was happening, you never recognized that? Like opening a beer at
No.
7 a.m, that's tough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, damn, you're drinking at 7? You know,
You know what?
even though I know you had the 4-day break and everything else, but you never saw it as, damn, what am I doing drinking at 7 a.m?
No. You know why? Because I had someone there with me, right? I had CJ getting off night shift.
Right.
You know, and he might have thought it was weird, but it's like, you know, then you got someone to drink with. You know you're going to sleep later. You know, if I got to work tonight, then my drinking time is 7 to 9. I'm going back to bed.
Right.
So I never slowed down enough to think that it was a problem. I never had anyone around me that picked, you know, that was like, hey, Matt, I think you're drinking a lot. Because everyone around us was
everybody
drinking,
was drinking,
you know?
absolutely.
And it was, you know, I remember that one time I was like, I was like, I need to cut down on my drinking. And there was a party in the other dorm. And I showed up with a 6-pack of O'Doul's, right? Because I was like, I'm still going to go to the party, but I'm not going to drink. So I'll bring some O'Doul's and everything will be okay. And people were looking at me like, Matt, what are you doing? And I was like, no, it's cool. It's cool. I'm not drinking tonight. I'm drinking O'Doul's, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, that shit was one night and it was over. You know, it was just back to the norm. So I never had any health issues. I never had any work issues. I never had anything flare up from my drinking, right? No DUI, no jail. I mean, I was bobbing and weaving, but I was getting by. And as long as I was getting by and there was no red flags, to me, it wasn't a problem. It was just part of my lifestyle.
So was there anything besides drinking that you were also doing, like when you go on leave? So, you know, sometimes one of my biggest fears was when I would go back home, you know, you surround yourself back with your friends that are doing the wrong. You know what I'm saying? And in the military, you always, like when my boys wanted to smoke weed, I'd be like, hey, can you stand over there? Because I can't afford for that to happen. You know what I'm saying? Did you ever encounter anything like that when you would go on leave or anything?
I think I smoked weed every time I went on leave. I can't remember. But the most important one was, you know, when I got back from Diego, I was deployed for 90 days. So we left on like September 20th, right? Like 10 days later, 9 days later, 90 days overseas. And then we came home. So you could either have Christmas off or New Year's off, right? Coming back from that deployment. So I worked Christmas and then I took leave over New Year's. And I went back to Vegas and, you know, it's, you know, you got deployed, you're drinking with your friends. It's all the same friends that are just doing their thing. And yeah, I smoked weed with my buddies. Not thinking anything of it, just thinking, you know, oh, shit, I'll have to behave for 30 days when I get back, or I'll have to drink gelatin or whatever the you know, whatever the cure for the day was to get the shit out of your system. So, so yeah, so I went home and smoked weed with my boys, like, you know, like it was back any other time. Yeah. And then, got back to Travis and, we went out. I think I was back for 2 or 3 days and I went out to a bar that night and, got wasted and went home with a female and, ended up passing out in someone else's room in the dorms. And, yeah, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it was. Because Mike, this is the part that got me upset because me and Matt, we always made sure we looked out for one another, especially when you knew you had to work the next day. And that was one of my big rules and I used to always tell Matt, I said, dude, you never go out when you have to work a day shift the next day. The reason why you don't do that is because management is there. You know what I'm saying? Especially that I know how Matt likes to party, drink, and everything else. I always said, don't do it, bro. Leave it for another time. Leave it for another time. What he told me? No, Izzy, I got it. I'm good. I got it. I'm good. So I said, okay. This is the part that pissed me off because I was night shift. He was my relief. He was supposed to relieve me from shift. We're supposed to be there by 6:45. You do your 15-minute brief changeover, and then at 7 you bounce, right? 6:30 comes, no Matt. Here comes the rest of his team. They're coming in. 6:45 comes, no Matt. 6:50 comes, no Matt. And of course, because they know that I hang out with Matt a lot, they say, yo, Devaya, where's Matt? And I was like, I mean, I knew where he was, but I was like, I don't know. So calling him, no answer. Calling him, no answer. So the senior controller tells me, she goes, Devaya, go get him. So I get up, I leave, and the first, because I knew he went out with 2 girls. So the first one, I went to her room. I said, yo, where the fuck is Matt? Oh, I don't know. You know, I'm trying to get ready for work, this and this and that. And I, you know, that kind of pissed me off because I was like, you're supposed to be looking out for each other. So I was like, where's the other dorm room? So they tell me where the other dorm room's at. And I knock on the door and I hear little pity patty of little feet running. And I'm like, this motherfucker just woke up right now. So the girl opens, she's like, and I just like bursted right inside. I was like, Matt. He was like, yeah, I'm almost done. I hear him in the shower. And I was like, dude, we need to go. You need to hurry up, this and this and that. He's still intoxicated. Like the dude is still drunk. So he's walking. We're walking from one door to the other. And I see him going side to side. And I was like, dude, you need to get changed and go into work. So I end up staying in the dorm room. I called and I said, hey, Matt's on his way to work and everything else. So then what happened from there, Matt?
So I get ready. I go into work, you know, get on the console. And of course I get called in to the master sergeant's office, right? He's like, yo, Porter. So I go in and he's like, what happened? And I was like, you know, I didn't even tell him I was out drinking because I would have gotten in trouble. I said, I went home with a female. I didn't stay in my room. I woke up late. You know, the alarm didn't go off, whatever I said, just to get out of the situation. And he says, all right. He goes, get your ass out there and get to work. I was like, yes, sir. You know, and I get out there and I sit down and I'm like, you know, just, you know, getting into work, you know, doing my thing, laying low. Well, there was a master sergeant that had just got stationed in the command post next to me. So he gets up and leaves and then comes back. And then I think the master sergeant or someone comes back in and they're like, Porter, come here. So I get up. Well, the master sergeant went over the head of the master sergeant supervisor and went to the lieutenant colonel and said, Porter smells like alcohol. And he's out on I don't know what was said, but alcohol was brought up. I smelled like alcohol. So I get pulled in the lieutenant colonel's office and he's like, listen, he goes, we think you're drunk on duty, or we think you've been drinking, you know, whatever. So you're going to go see the shirt. So I get sent to go see the first sergeant. So I go to the first sergeant and he's like, yeah, he goes, we're going to go to the hospital. You're going to take blood. We're going to take your alcohol level. And we think that you're drunk on duty. And I said, okay. And then he said, and we're going to give you a drug test. And as soon as he said it, I was like, you know, shit. And I didn't say anything. And, you know, my mind's racing. And so there was nothing I could do. I mean, from then on, you know, my shoulders dropped and I knew that it was the timer had started, you know, before it was going to be found out. So I go to the hospital. They take my blood. It's like 11:30 in the morning. I think by the time I went to the hospital, my blood alcohol level was 0.21 at 11:30 the following day. They go, I take a drug test. They turn everything in. I go back. I don't even know where I went. I didn't go back to work. I think they sent me home. I went back to my room or whatever. And then I think I went back into work one more day, maybe 2 more days. And then OSBI comes in. They pull me out of the command post. They pull my clearance. I failed the drug test. I tested positive for marijuana. Next thing you know, I'm in a room with an OSBI agent questioning me about who I was with, when did I smoke pot, you know, just the whole nine. You know, I denied everything. I was like, no, I was with my friends in Vegas and they were smoking and I was in the car and I was breathing it in and, whatever.
Right.
And so they left, they came back. They were like, no, your levels are too high, whatever. And so they reclassed me to the orderly room where I was like keeping track of like who had their chem warfare gear checked in and checked, bullshit data entry stuff. But I knew that I was, I knew that I was in trouble. This was at the beginning of January. So it's like January, 5th. And then, what was it, like 2.5 months? I was in the orderly room, and then I met with the lieutenant colonel, the female, and they said, we're going to turn in paperwork, and you're going to be discharged. You're going to be discharged with a general under honorable condition discharge for misconduct, and that was at the beginning of March of 02. I'm sorry, 01. And then a week and a half later, I got my car packed up, and I'm driving back to Las Vegas with I'm escorted to the gate. I mean, it was crazy. I'm escorted to the gate, and I left, and I'm driving back to Las Vegas from Sacramento, with all my stuff in my car, and didn't know what I was going to do. And that's when, Israel, I don't think I know we talked after that because I was discharged, but that's when, looking back, that was a very bad time. I had lost my entire identity. I was a soldier. I was in the Air Force, and I was in a uniform, and it was, that was my, that I had bragging rights, right? I was deployed for 9/11. I was like this hero, right, to some people, and here I was, shamed and discharged from the military, and it was terrible, man. It was like, looking back, it was, I was like existing. I wasn't even thriving. I was, I wasn't suicidal. It was nothing like that. It was like I had a place to go. I went back home to my dad's house. I'm sleeping on the couch. And I tell you, that night that I got back, the only place I knew where to go was the bar. That's all I knew. So I went to an Applebee's because it was down the street from my dad's house. And I'm sitting at the bar drinking a Bud Light, and I'm like, what went wrong? Here I am. And it was crazy because as an alcoholic, I'm staring at my beer and I'm thinking, what is the problem? What is wrong with my life, as I'm peeling the label off of a beer, right? And it's like, it's right in front of me. Didn't even know it. And it was a bad time. So again, like I said, growing up, when I quit playing sports, I lose this identity, and I have to recreate myself with this drinking and partying. Now I'm in the military, and I completely lose my identity. I mean, not only was I no longer in uniform, I had to give the uniforms back. It wasn't even like, these are yours. Yeah, they were like, these are ours, right? You got to turn them in. And I mean, it was terrible. It was and the embarrassment and the shame, dude. I didn't tell my dad. My dad did not know the truth for a year. He thought it was an alcohol-related incident. And
so
my
he didn't
mom
know about
knew.
the drugs. He didn't know that you popped.
I told my mom. My mom knew. My dad did not know for a year that it was because of a failed drug test.
So now when they were questioning you, didn't you have the cleanser in your car to sort of clean your body?
No. So what they did was they said you have what did they say? You have 2 hours to report. To go take the drug test. And so I ran down in Fairfield to some smoke shop and bought some bullshit, drink this and you're good to go, and it shit didn't work. I should sue that company. It was some bullshit.
Now I know when all that happened. So again, I got off the night shift and I'm hearing a banging on my door. And I mean, I thought I was being raided. I thought it was the cops. And I opened the door, and here comes Matt telling me straight out. He goes, Izzy, I'm fucked. Those are the last words I remember him telling me. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on? He's like, I'm fucked. I know it's going to come back positive because I smoked weed, this and that. And I couldn't even say anything to you. I was just looking like, oh my God, like, is this really happening?
I remember
You know
that.
what
I
I'm
was
saying?
sitting in that chair staring at your TV, and I was like, and my mind was racing, and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, where? And it was, I'm telling you, man, that was the beginning of this landslide of total chaos.
Yeah, because I'm glad that you're sharing this, because a lot of people at times think that the military is this heavenly place, like there's no problems, that you're not dealing with issues, and people don't understand that just because we're uniform does not mean that we're not still human. You know what I'm saying? That we still go through problems, we're still dealing with negativity, we're still dealing with all sorts of other stuff. Every time people like, oh, you're in the service, the first thing they say is thank you for your service, but they don't even know why. So,
right. And to this day, when people thank me for my service, it makes me cringe to this very day, because I feel like I let them down, and I don't tell, because I didn't finish. Right, I served 2 years. I signed up for 4. I served 2. They took my GI Bill. I had to. I mean, they pulled that because I didn't commit for the 4 years. So to this day, when someone says thank you for your service, I just look down. I mean, if you ever notice, I will look at the ground, because I just feel like I let them down. And I mean, any service is good service,
right?
But it's like, don't thank me. Like it's my bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to speak about the Air Force and like the problems that exist, my problem was throughout my whole life up until, I had to make some serious decisions. I was looking for this external solution to this internal problem, right? So I'd get a good job, and I'd be like, hey, if I get a good job, it's going to make me change my ways, right? I'm going to quit drinking because I'm going to get this really good job, and it's going to be worth it, right? Yeah. Or I'm going to get a straight edge girlfriend that doesn't drink, she doesn't do drugs, and she's going to motivate me. I'm going to want to stay straight for her, right? She's going to change me. The Air Force was the same way. When I was thinking about the Air Force, like I said, I knew that I could drink, but I knew I couldn't do drugs. And when I joined in hopes, hey, I'll quit doing the drugs because I can't, but I can drink. Right. So I'll just drink and I won't do drugs, and everything will work out, right? And I'm doing this, add this, subtract this, mix up this, trying to fix something internally that wasn't. The problem was, the good job, I still brought me with me, right? Yeah. The good girlfriend was still me. Right. I go in the Air Force, it's still Matt. It's not this new version of me. It's the same me with just a different outfit on.
Yeah.
And that's what I was constantly, the Air Force was the biggest casualty to my addiction to this day. I haven't lost anything bigger than that. That was the biggest casualty of my addiction. And it always will be. And I wish I could sit here and say, that happened, and then I stopped everything and I quit drinking. And that's just not the case.
So let me ask you this.
Anyway,
if that incident would have never happened, do you think you would see yourself still in the military?
No, the same. So this is where the blessing comes in, right? So at the time I'm thinking, oh my God, 2 years of my life, like 2 years felt like 20, right? I wasted 2 years of my life in the military. It was a blessing because I would have gotten kicked out. I would have had the same thing would have happened. It could have happened 5 years in. It could have happened 15 years in. The way that I was living, I wasn't going to make it to retirement. If something would have happened and I would have gotten discharged for the same thing, something similar, but I would have lost even more time in the military. So it was a blessing that I was only in for 2 years when that happened, because it was only 2 years, but at the time, dude, that was my whole life. That was forever.
So now when you got out and you transitioned back home, you're what, in your mid-20s, 30s. You're back home
Yeah,
with dad.
I was 20, 22. I was like almost 20. I probably just turned 24. Probably at the end of that month I got out. It was probably the worst birthday ever.
The worst birthday gift.
Yeah.
But as you transition out and everything else, did the addiction stop, or did you got addicted? You just kept going down the rabbit hole and everything else?
Yeah. So you would think that I would be like, oh shit, okay, enough is enough. And it wasn't. It wasn't the complete opposite, but it was. I never stopped drinking. I was working odd jobs. I had some little shithole apartment, for whatever a month. I was a dishwasher. And again, you're seeking out these people that you're going to party with, right? So so you're partying. You're doing the same thing. So nothing really changed. I ended up moving so I'm from Las Vegas, but I enlisted in Oklahoma. I don't think we touched on that, but
Right.
I left Las Vegas to get away from the partying, the drugs, go to Oklahoma, again, looking for an external solution for an internal problem. So I changed my environment. I get to Oklahoma, and by golly, there's people that do drugs in Oklahoma too, right? And I'm going to find them. So here you are, right? You go to a new place. It's just like the military. You go in the military, you got to find people that drink. You're going to find people that drink. Now, I say that because I'm sure, and I hope someone hears this, I'm sure there is a super strong part of the military that's all about recovery. There's probably great programs of recovery in the Air Force. Not even Air Force sponsored. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous, not so much Narcotics Anonymous, because that's, drugs are drugs in the military. Right. But I'm sure there's a great source of recovery in the military. I don't know where that is, because that's not what I was seeking, right? I wasn't ready to get sober. I wasn't looking for that in the military. So I say that because if you're an airman, if you're a sergeant, if you're an officer, if you're a colonel, and you have a drinking problem, and you don't know where to go, there has to be a source of recovery in the military. There's too many people dealing with things in the military. And now with the whole mental health thing, that's a whole nother ball of wax. Recovery for alcoholics there's got to be a strong program in the military. It's inevitable. There's too many people there not to have recovery.
Yeah.
So
and they do, but the stigma is that as a military member, even as an officer, you try to bottle all that stuff in.
Right.
Because it's sort of seen, the stigma is it's sort of seen like a sign of weakness when you want to go get help until it's too late. Now you're another Matt being kicked out because you were too afraid to tell somebody that you needed help. Even like they always express, go to the chaplain, see a chaplain, if anything, you know what I'm saying? But some of these soldiers, they don't even want to do that. And then of course, who you turn to, you're going to turn to your friend who's as drunk as you are next to you, and you're telling them your issues and your complaints. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So when did the addiction stop?
So I moved back to Oklahoma. Now that's when, like Mike, you asked earlier about the photography. I started to get into photography when I moved back to Oklahoma. I had a chance to get into business with a lady. She had a bunch of clients. I kind of started to cross-train into learning photography, but I was still partying. I had a little bit of money that I had bought some equipment, a good lens and a good camera. This is like 2002, 2003. Everyone's going to become a photographer. They get a printer. They get a digital camera. I don't know shit about photography. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I like to take photos. I can frame it up. You asked me about exposure and all this other shit.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you nothing, right? I didn't know enough. But that's when I first started to get into it. But again, I'm still drinking, I'm partying. I got, a shit job. So I go back to Oklahoma, and I had, let's see. So 2003, I started to kind of dabble in the photography. I couldn't get a good job because I couldn't pass a drug test. Right. So when you go down the list of jobs, you don't look at a job for what it pays. I was looking at a job to see if they're going to drug test me. I mean, that's just where we're at. So I couldn't get a good job. And then let's see, what really happened. I had like 2 girlfriends in a row, maybe 3. I had one before the military that said, "You're a drug addict. Like, I can't be with you because you're a drug addict." And I'm like, okay, whatever, right? Like, get out of here,
Yeah.
Well, so here comes 2003, and I have a girlfriend, and it's July, it's 4th of July. She shows up with her dad, and she's moving out, right? She's there to get her shit. She's moving out, and she said, "You're an alcoholic," and I'm like, there's that word again, right? Like, fuck, alcoholic, whatever. So it started to I kind of noticed, okay, something's happening here, right? Something's wrong. Here I am 2 years later after the Air Force, and another girlfriend's moving out. And I remember looking at her, and I said, "If you stay, I'll quit drinking." And as soon as I said it, I thought, shit, I hope she doesn't stay, because I'm a liar. Because I'm trying to pull out anything just to tell her, hey, stay with me and I'll quit drinking.
Right.
And she said no, she's leaving. So she left on 4th of July, and I drank for like 2 more days, right? Went to work, whatever. July 6th, I come home, and I don't really know how the day went. But I'm sitting there, and no girlfriend. My life is a mess. I think my mom was on vacation. My dad's in Las Vegas. I didn't really have a relationship with my sister because I was, always partying, and she's got her own life. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna quit drinking. This is it. I'm gonna quit drinking. And as soon as I said it, I realized I didn't know how to. It sounded good, and I really meant it, but I really knew I couldn't stop. And I freaked. And I'm telling you, it was like so much was a moment. I mean, this is it. This is my moment, right? And I'm realizing that I can't stop. And I start freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm just full of emotion. And I did the only thing I could think of. And I prayed. And I was like, God, you got to help me. And it wasn't like a God, get me home safe because I've been drinking. It wasn't a God, make it work out with my girlfriend. It wasn't, I was never mad at God, right? Early on. Some people are mad at God because of the positions that they're in. They get put in a place, they're mad at God. I was never mad at God, right? I knew who he was when I was a kid. He was always there, but I always pushed him aside, right? It's not about God. It's about whatever's going on.
Right.
But in that moment, I was like, God, I need you to help me. I just need your help. And I got up, and I went and I got the phone book, and it was like it's like a haze. I just got up, I got the phone book, I sat down, and I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous in the phone book, right? AA, it's easy to find, right? Like, go to the white pages, right? AA, right there. I find a phone number, and I call it on my landline, right? No cell phones.
Yeah.
And someone answers the phone, and they're like, Edmund Group AA. And I said, I go, hey, do you guys take walk-ins? And he goes, yeah. He goes, the meeting's at 8:00. And I said, okay, like, I didn't know if I had to register, sign in. Like, do I got to follow you on Instagram?
Pull the ticket, pull the ticket.
Right. I'm like, where do I sign up? Do you guys take walk-in? Like a haircut. I got to make an appointment. What do I do? And he said, yeah. He goes, the meeting's at 8:00. And I said, okay. And I got off the phone, and I remember looking at the clock, and it was 6:30. And I thought, shit, what am I going to do for 90 minutes? Right. So I sat down, and I'm like thinking, okay, in the 1980s, the Alcoholics Anonymous commercials were people, and they had their candles. Remember, and they'd light their candles, and they were on bleachers, and they'd say, my name is Steve, and I'm an alcoholic. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to say I'm an alcoholic, right? And I'm like, and all the candles look the same. So they probably provide the candles at the meetings. So I'm like, they'll have candles and we'll stand there, but I got to say that my name is Matt and I'm an alcoholic. And I couldn't do it. Bro, I go in the bathroom and I'm looking at myself and I'm trying to say it, and I'm bursting with tears, bro. I'm a mess. And it was like all the fear and the hope and the love and the hate and everything. It was almost like a little seed of hope. Like, I can go to this meeting and it's going to be okay, right? I don't know anything about AA. And it was like this little seed of hope. And it was almost like this, like cage had been released of my heart, because I thought, here it is, right? Like, it was a little bit of hope. And dude, I could not compose myself. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm trying to say, my name is Matt and I'm an alcoholic. And I can't even get it out.
Wow.
So I go to this, I go to the meeting, and the crazy part is to this day, the meeting don't start till 8:00 every night. The building doesn't open until 8:00. Someone goes with a key and they open the door and everyone's waiting outside and they walk in and the meeting starts at 8:00. Now, who answered that phone at 6:30?
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I can't tell you that it was Jesus.
Right.
But it might have been someone who knew him. You know what I mean? It was someone answered the phone, and I tell you to this day, if they did not answer that phone, I would have gotten a different idea, and I might not be where I'm at today.
Wow.
So I go to the meeting, and I'm a mess. I'm all out of tears, and I go in there and I sit down, and I look up on the wall, and it says, step 1 is we admit that we're powerless over alcohol, and our life had become unmanageable. And that was my entire life up to that point. And it was on the wall. And as soon as I read it, I thought, this is where I need to be. And I didn't know anything else. And there was a guy sitting there, and he said, they said, is this anyone's first meeting? And I raised my hand, and he said, just remember that you never have to drink again if you don't want to. And I didn't want to, but I didn't know how. But I knew that I didn't want to drink anymore. And I'm telling you, it hasn't been, roses and sunsets since then. Right. But the desire to drink has not been there, and I'm just a better person. And that just started the whole journey. But in that night, in that moment, it was a moment of surrender.
Right.
And it's crazy. It still blows my mind. I still get chills when I think about it, but that's what happened. And that's how I ended up in AA.
So your journey brought you to how many years now of sobriety?
It was, you're going to make me cry. July 6th, 2004. July 6th, it was 18 years.
Wow. 18 years. Damn. I don't know what I would have done. But that's awesome though, man.
There was just, I don't know. It was crazy. But
let me ask you this. Why do you think it was so hard for you to admit that you were an alcoholic? Especially knowing
in that moment?
That word kept coming up, that people kept identifying you as an addict. It was because in that moment of surrender, I was being so emotional. I couldn't say it. I said it in the meeting, no problem. But in that moment, I'm just trying to prep myself for the AA meeting, right? I'm I got to say it. So we might as well practice. And I just couldn't compose myself to say it. Now, it's funny because when I got into relationships after I got sober, I'm married now, but I didn't meet my wife until I was 5 years sober. But right after that, I would meet a girl and, it would come up. It's like, who isn't going to meet a girl and go get a drink? Right. Right.
I couldn't do that, but I didn't want to tell them that I had quit drinking.
Right.
And I remember I met one girl and she's like, so you don't drink anymore? She's like, so you don't drink at all? She's like, what are you, like some type of raging alcoholic? And I was like, yeah.
Of course. That's why I don't drink anymore.
That's why I don't drink anymore. But but in the beginning, it was something that it would always come up, right? And I would always volunteer the information, because to me, when you meet a new friend or when you meet a new girlfriend, right, you want to draw that line in the sand and say, listen, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't really need to tell you why. It's just not part of my lifestyle.
Right.
And I had an ex-girlfriend who we had broken up and we had kind of reconnected. And she was like, she goes, are you drinking again? And I go, no. And I go, why? You want to get drunk with me? And she goes, I would love to get drunk with you.
Oh,
and I'm like, Jesus, that was like, so I purposely draw that line in the sand so that when they cross that line, you know what their intentions are, right? Their intentions aren't my sobriety, they want to party. That's just how it is. So they don't take it serious. So in the beginning, I wouldn't really up front say anything about it, but it would come up, hey, I don't drink or whatever. And when I met my wife, the first couple nights I went to see her, she'd be like, hey, do you want a beer? And I'm like, no, I got to work in the morning. And I really did have to work in the morning. I worked another job. Right. So I would always say I don't have to work in the morning. But we met on a dating site and I put on there, I drink occasionally. I couldn't put, I don't drink at all, because that's like a red flag. Right. So, so slowly it came out that, that I don't drink, and this is why I don't drink. Now it's awesome, because if you know anything about me as a person, you either know that I love photography or that I'm sober. And most people know both. And it's just part of who I am. So it's cool now because it's really part of my personality, and it's who I am. And I don't have any qualms about it to tell someone. And like I said, if telling someone my story helps them, then, I'm all about it, because it doesn't have to be that bad or whatever, but it's if it's something you're dealing with, you're going to have to deal with it. It's just how it is. But
yeah, well, one of the things that, like, when you talked about earlier, is what people really sometimes don't understand. And this is from the Air Force alone, so I know the other branches are just as bad. When they kick you out, they are brutal about it. They have no qualms. They have, like, we had this one lady, she was getting kicked out. She's like, well, I think it's going to take me a couple months. I was like, no, like, they're not. She got a phone call. We're overseas. She got a phone call and said, and next week they're going to come pick your stuff up and you're out. Like, it was, and this is overseas, which takes months and months. And so I think people, like, when they say they're done with you, like, they don't do it nice. They're not, hey, let's set you up somewhere. Like you said, they literally escort you to the gate, say, bye, we're done. Like, I want your ID card.
Not that I would have taken the help, but recovery, rehab, nothing was ever brought up. Like, hey, listen, Matt, this drunk on duty thing, can we put you in a program? Can we, not that, and it, would it have helped? Maybe, who knows? But there was no talk of recovery, get past this, nothing, no type of rehab.
Wow.
It was zero tolerance, and I get it. It was marijuana, it was zero tolerance, but the drunk on duty, that no one ever said, hey, on a side note, unofficially off the record, Matt Porter, Airman Porter, do you think you have a drinking problem? You know what I mean? Never, didn't even come up in conversation.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from, our culture is drinking all the time. A lot of Izzy's in my story involves alcohol, right? A lot of my stories involve alcohol. And so I even had I knew a guy that was a functioning alcoholic. He's same situation, get off of work. He went to the shop got him a 6-pack, and that was his day. But the guy was at PT, would be drunk and could still function. He was functional. He was a great athlete and those type of things. And he ended up going to rehab. Like, they sent him through a program. I think we're overseas. I think they sent him to South Korea or something like that, which is, kind of funny of what South Korea really is for us. It's like it's drinking heaven. Yeah. But they sent him on a program. And when he came back, I had a supervisor that had to go every day at 7, had to go check up on him and give him a breathalyzer. And so I think within our culture, like, if you say you have a problem, or if you find out you do have a problem, because it's so part of our culture that we don't look at it as the same as, like, oh, dude, that's really bad. Like, we look at it as like, you fucked up, man. Like you can't handle your own self. That's your fault. You're a burden to the society. We look at it really bad. And I only think it's because our culture is so heavily involved in alcohol that, and like what you're saying, man, those dorms, like, that is how people got caught up the most. I've known a dude who was married, came back from deployment, had a bad situation, got divorced, and they moved him into the dorms when they knew he had a drinking problem, moved him into the dorms, And of course, you go to the dorms, you go in the backyard, there's always that group of people. That's all they do. There's those people that always go out, like we go to the gym, it's all those things, right? And that's it. And so I think a lot of it is our culture in the military is that we just know alcohol is going to be part of the situation. Like it's like when you get those guys that come in and say, I don't drink. It's like, but why? Like what's wrong? And even to us, sometimes when it's like, I got drunk and I woke up and I went to work drunk. Had those stories a lot. We've had those in Honduras. I've had those numerous times. And so for us, it's like, people are like, are you serious? You didn't know you have a problem? It's like, everyone had a fucking problem. Like everybody is like legit a functioning alcoholic to a certain extent. And so it's so normalized within our culture that we really don't take stock and sit there and saying like, hey man, work hard and play hard. It involves alcohol. And that's not right. Because again, you said 21, you're 21. I know some kids that when they went 18 in Germany, you have these problems and next, your life is filled with alcohol. And, there's some things like I've always mentioned it too, that, I had a drinking issue when I got out of the military. And now what I like, I've never went to AA or in those things, but I like to have a beer in my fridge and knowing that there are times where I look at it and I want it, but I also know there's times it's back in the fridge. I'm like, I forgot it was even there. Like, I think you need something there that gives you some kind of power over that. And that's what I feel like when you went there and said you finally admitted, like, because that's hard to sit there and say, I am this. Everyone else can call you to your face, but until you call it yourself, then it has like that real oomph in it. And so I think, once you were able to admit that, that's when you had that power over it. And then now, if anyone's going through drinking, it's like that concept, just like you don't get to 5 years, 7 years, you get to today and we'll get to tomorrow. And then we'll just we'll compound on those into where now, like, where if somebody was to call you an alcoholic, it's like, it's a joke now, right? Like, I hope everyone understands us laughing about it is the way to process this information of like, it's funny now, but 20-year-old you, 24-year-old can't, it's not that. But on those, speaking of all that, when you talk about your drinking, you talk about those things. One thing that we never do talk about though, is what it's like to be kicked out of the military. Like, what do you do after that? Cause you like you said, your GI Bill's gone, right? Your benefits, I know some of them are not the same as an honorable, right? So for work, what are some of the things that you found that have like, not a hindrance, but is like, that is an issue where you don't have that honorable duty?
So one of the first good jobs that I applied for was to be a jailer back in the county that I was at, Israel in Edmond. And it was, I don't know how soon after. So I had moved back. So it was probably, '03. I don't know that I was sober yet. But I applied to be a jailer and I got the interview and I made the second interview. So I'm on they got the panel. I got, 4 police officers in front of me. And I think I was sober. I was, because I wasn't nervous. So I went in there and they had my paperwork in front of them and they said, we noticed that you only served 2 years in the Air Force. They knew it was a 4-year deal. They said, what happened here? Why only 2 years? And I was so ashamed of that truth that I told them that I had gotten in a fight or something. I made up something. Which is completely stupid compared to what the real reason was. But I said, no, I got in a fight and I ended up getting discharged. And I remember leaving that interview and I got home and I started crying. There's a lot of crying going on in my sobriety. Anyway, every time I realized something, I was crying when it happened. But anyway, so I get home and I'm just emotional because I knew I ruined that interview. So what I did was I drove back up to the police station and I went inside and I took the captain outside and I said, listen, I told him the truth. I said, I smoked pot and I got discharged. I said, that's the truth. I've never told anyone. I don't even know that my dad knew the truth when I told this captain. But I said, listen, I have to tell you the truth. This is the truth. I know it messed up the interview, but this is the truth. And he said, well, I appreciate you being honest. Yes, it completely foiled your interview. You're not going to get hired. But thank you for telling me that. So fast forward like 4 months, I apply for my position at the Department of Corrections in Oklahoma. I go in, I get the second interview. I got the panel in front of me. And I mean, I'm nipping at the butt. I'm like, okay, as soon as you ask me about the Air Force, it's on, right? I'm ready. We're going to be honest. It's going to be awesome. They never asked about it. It didn't even come up. So at the end of the interview, they said, They said, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want? And I was like, yes. I was in the military and I got kicked out for smoking weed, and I'm sober. I've been sober for 5 months, and I just need a second chance. I mean, I spilled the beans. I gave them information they didn't even need, but I remember I was 5 months sober, and I said, I'm 5 months sober. This is what happened in the military, and I just need a second chance. And they had 50 people apply for that position, and I got that job. And that's the same job that I had for 11 years prior to moving to, well, I switched jobs, but then I came to Pennsylvania. So that, and I asked them, years later, probably 4 or 5 years later, one of the women that were on the panel, I said, what was it about me? And she said, because we didn't ask you that, and you were completely honest. And we knew that if you're going to be honest about that, those are the kind of people that we want to work for us, because, you didn't have to disclose any of that. And I did. And I just felt great, and so the job that I have now, I will never not say I served. Never. I've served. I'm proud of my time in. I'll be the first to tell you the reason why I'm no longer in. All that. I have no qualms about it. I will never deny my service in the military. But with that comes, what happened in the truth. So if it makes it to that, then that's what happened. But I never deny my service. So the job that I have now, I put in, I think I just put in honorable or general discharge under honorable conditions. And when I went in for the interview, they could give two shits about what the discharge was. They wanted to know what I did in the command post and how my communications, my training related to the job that I have now. And they didn't even ask about my last job. It was about my Air Force job 20 years ago and what I did in the military. And it was hands down. That's all we talked about in the interview. And I got that job. So for me, I mean, years later, there's no issues. I mean, especially now with how decriminalized marijuana is, it's almost like, I have employers that feel bad for me because I was discharged for marijuana in the state of California, in the military, when California was the first state to decriminalize it.
Yeah.
But, Air Force, it's zero tolerance. That's, there's no qualms. I was never mad at the military. I was, rules are rules. I broke the rules. But early on, I don't, I would have to admit it, because again, I wasn't going to leave it off my application.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone besides that jailer position. And then I had the same job for 11 years after that. So no one ever said, this is a big deal and you're not going to get this job because of what happened in the military.
So let me ask you this two questions for you. The first one, now that you've been through it, you faced the devil, you overcame, you've been sobriety for now 18 years and everything else. You've got a good job, beautiful family. What wisdom or revelations will you give to somebody that sort of will be in your position before you found sobriety? Like, what will you tell them? Will you tell them just do it, don't fear it, admit it, don't deny it? Like, what wisdom or knowledge will you give another Matt Porter that's coming up behind you that's having those same issues that you went through?
Well, I mean, you got to be, you got to admit that there's an issue, because, like I said, you don't have the problem at 9 o'clock at night when you're at the bar with all your boys, right? That's not the problem. The problem is at 2:30 in the morning when you're wasted at your house by yourself and all your friends are gone, and you get up in the morning and you quit your job because you're hungover. You know what I mean? That's what I did, right? My friends, they dropped out of high school. They all had good jobs. I graduated high school. We'd party all weekend. Everyone goes to work on Monday. I quit my job because I'm strung out, right? Because I want to keep partying. That was my way of thinking. So to tell someone, you got to be ready to make that decision. And the good thing is, the people that love you will be there for you on the back end of it. You know what I mean? You'll find out who your real friends are. I don't have to this day, 18 years later, I've never had one bartender call me and tell me that they miss me at the bar. Right. You know what I mean? Really? I've never had one person call me and say, you know what? We want the old Matt back. Right, bring that guy back. It doesn't happen. So you just, you have to find it within yourself. For me, and I can only speak for me, there was nothing, like I said, there was nothing externally that was going to fix me internally. It doesn't work like that. I had to be faced with myself by myself and make that decision, and I couldn't call. And it's funny because when I quit drinking, when my friends found out that I quit drinking, half of them would say, well, you didn't even drink that much. And the other half would say, yeah, dude, no shit, you're an alcoholic. Like it was either one or the other, and to this day, they're just like, I don't get it. Right. You weren't that bad. And it was like, my problem wasn't when I was drinking, right? When I was drinking, I was fine. My problem was how much I thought about drinking, right? When I wasn't drinking, I'm thinking about drinking. Right. When I'm not doing drugs, I'm thinking about doing drugs, right? If I drank and did drugs as much as I thought about it, I'd be dead. I mean, flat out. It just, that's the way it is. So once I realized it was my thinking that was the problem, it wasn't my drinking. And people, I think Alec Baldwin said, I don't go to AA meetings for my drinking. I go to AA meetings for my thinking, right? That made sense because it's my thinking that gets me. I can walk into a bar and have a conversation with everyone sitting at the bar without even saying a word, right? Because you walk in there and you already have these preconceived notions about what that person is or what they think of you. And you have conversations with all these people in your head and you just sit there by yourself, right? At 3:00 in the afternoon and be like, man, that guy must be an alcoholic because he's at the bar at 3:00.
Right.
While you're ordering another beer at 3:00 in the afternoon, same thing. Yeah. But what I would tell someone is, you just have to come to that place where, you can't do it by yourself. And it doesn't have to be God, right? It's got to be something outside of yourself has to get you through this. And for me, it was God and it was Alcoholics Anonymous. And I can't, I'm not here to say Alcoholics Anonymous is the only way, but for me, I couldn't afford rehab. The Air Force didn't offer anything. I couldn't go into a program because I was trying to live on my own. I had my own apartment. I can't, you can't just up and go into some 28-day program. So for me, it was AA. It was showing up. To this day, the people that amaze me are the veterans who joined after 9/11, right? There's the soldiers that are like 9/11 happened and I went to the recruiter and I joined. Those are the heroes to me because I wouldn't have joined because of 9/11. I just happened to be in when it happened, right? But those people that went in and joined after 9/11, those are the people that we should be thanking for their service, right? That's a big deal to me. It blows my mind. The other thing are people that got sober in the middle of COVID. That's to be isolated like that and to be able to stop drinking without meetings, right? Zoom meetings, whatever. I needed a place to go to be around other alcoholics, to hear their stories, to relate to them and be like, okay, I'm not the only one going through this, right? You're not alone. So if you have a problem, go to an AA meeting, just hear them out. You don't even have to say you're an alcoholic. Go sit in a meeting, hear their stories. You might walk out of there and be like, you know what? I don't have a problem, which you might, but 5 years later, you might be in a meeting and be like, oh shit, here we are again. And I might have a drinking problem, but you relate to those people. You're not different. You find those similarities, you relate to them, and then you go to this safe place for an hour and you hear their stories and it gives you that hope to not drink one more day. If you told me, Matt, you can't drink forever, I'd say, I can't stop drinking forever, right? That's too much, but I'm not going to drink today. And I plan on not drinking tomorrow. Right. And that's all I've done is just done 24 hours at a time. And I surprised myself when I say I've been sober for 18 years. Like I've never done anything for 18 years, right? Like that's crazy.
That surprised me too, because I know how hard you used to party. But let me ask you this. I'm a big proponent at times if you don't want to heed the advice of others, then sometimes you have to fall on your face to learn. It's going to have to be on you. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it has to be within yourself. You as an individual have to be able to step up and take responsibility or accountability for your actions. You know, if you notice that you are drinking at 7 a.m., you have a beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you cannot see past that, where your thought process is, I need a fucking drink all the time, then you need to be able to look in the mirror and tell yourself, hey, I do have a problem. Let me go check out one of these meetings or talk to somebody to try to help me out and everything else.
Right.
With that being said, how small did your circle of friends get now that you became sober? How small did it get? And did that affect you? Were you like shocked, or were you like, yeah, I saw this coming, I knew this was going to happen?
No, you know, you're on such a different path immediately, because you get into meetings, you know, and did people stop coming by my house? Yeah. You know what I mean? For sure. Because you don't have that common ground anymore, right? You don't meet up and have drinks. So what you have to do, for me, I'd have to find that common ground with those friends. So if those friends came by, they weren't bringing over weed, they weren't bringing over a 6-pack, but we would talk about music. We would talk about Wu-Tang. You know what I mean? You would find those things that you were friends before, and that would be your common ground. By the time I was at my bottom, I don't want to say you have to hit a bottom to, you know, you don't, you just have to, you know, you come to a point where shit's got to change, and you know it. And it's, you know, it's a problem. But by the time I got to that point, I was already alone. I mean, like I said, my girlfriend had moved out 2 days earlier. My parents didn't want to hear it. When I called my sister and told her I was going to go to AA, she was like, yeah, okay, call me in 6 months. You know, it wasn't like, oh shit, Matt's all better. It was like, oh shit, Matt's on another one, right? I'm on the next great idea. Just like the Air Force, or just like, you know, Susie Q, whoever you're going to date, or I'm going to move to Oklahoma from Vegas because I'm going to get all better in Oklahoma, right? I'm going to go to the Air Force from Oklahoma because I'm going to get all better in the Air Force, right? Just moving all around. By the time I hit my bottom and I was ready to change, I didn't have any place else to go. The military didn't want me. The discharge code I had couldn't even get me in the Navy. I went right to the Navy when I got out. I was like, okay, oh my God, I got to get back in the military.
Yeah.
The Air Force doesn't want me. He looked at my 214 and he said, no, man, this discharge code, you can't go in any branch.
Anywhere. Right. So give us a little bit about the photography before we wrap it up. So tell us about Matthew Porter's photography.
Well, like I said, I always like to take pictures. I think the photo thing stemmed from, I used to go to a summer camp when I was a kid. Yeah. Before email, before cell phones, before FaceTime, right? You'd go to summer camps and you would take pictures. And these pictures were the only memories you had of your friends. So I think I could always appreciate a photo, right? So I just like to take pictures. They always kind of meant a lot. I never gave a shit about photography. I never took a class. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I always like to take pictures. So when I started to get into it, I was taking, my brother-in-law at the time called me and he said, hey, you got that really nice camera, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, would you come out and take pictures of my son playing football? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. You know, I can do that. So I went out there. I'm taking action shots of him playing football. And some parents out there see me taking the pictures and they come up and they're like, hey, can you take pictures of my kid too? And I'm like, yeah. Right. So next thing you know, I got jersey numbers written on the inside of my wrist. And I'm scoping out jerseys and I'm taking action shots of the pictures. And then I'm selling the CDs at the next game of action shots of the previous game. And I'm just straight hustling, you know? And so I start doing that. And then it just kind of like, I just enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed taking pictures. I think I enjoyed showing a picture to a person and they're just like, oh my God, like capturing that moment of like their kid, you know, swinging a bat or whatever. Right. And so it just kind of, you know, you get away from the drinking. I got to find shit to do. I quit smoking cigarettes, got back into the gym, you know, got a job. I wasn't emotionally ready yet for a girlfriend. So I just kept taking pictures. The first girlfriend I had when I got sober, she said, you're emotionally unavailable. And I was like, well, that's better than someone calling me an alcoholic. Like, yeah, I'll take it, you know?
I'll take it.
So it was cool. But I slowly just started taking pictures. I was doing family photos. It was crazy, man. I'm charging like $30 for family photos, you know, and I go out and I take pictures and I'd give them a disc, you know, and I was just hustling. And slowly I just started getting better. The business got a little bit better. I went from shooting sports to shooting families. I landed an album cover, you know, here and there, just staying after it. And then I got into like the lighting and then the fashion. And well, you were with me. So funny story. Mm-hmm. We're out to dinner that night at the restaurant when we met Lexi. Mm-hmm. So Mike, Lexi was our waitress. So the waitress comes up. She gets our order, and I'm like, man, she had really pretty eyes. She just had really pretty green eyes, cute girl. So I'm with Israel, and I think Chepe was there, right? I think he was visiting.
Yeah.
So the waitress comes back, and I said, hey, listen, I said, you know, not to sound like a sleazeball, but I'm a photographer, like famous line, right? I'm a photographer. Come over to my studio in my basement, you know, whatever. So I said, I'm a photographer. I said, you know, have you ever had a photo shoot, you know, whatever? And she said, well, that's funny you say that because I go to John Casablanca School of Acting and Modeling. And I was like, well, that's great. So she met up with us, not us, but me. And I took some pictures, awesome pictures, still some of my favorites of her. And she shows her agent. So her agent is like, oh my gosh, who is your photographer? So next thing you know, I'm getting hired by this agent to shoot all these different models in these different outfits for like $45 an outfit. I mean, it was like stupid money. It was like go out and shoot 5 models in 4 different outfits and walk away with like $400. I mean, it was great. So that's when I got into like the portrait stuff and the fashion. And so, I mean, to answer your question, Israel, it really just elevated my creativity. It gave me something I was good at. Again, this creating your identity, right? Finding out what your purpose is. I'm not drinking. I'm good at something. Let's extend on this and see kind of where we're at. Always kept a job, a different, a main job. Always did the photography on the side. And now, I'm busy as ever with it. You know, when I'm not working, I'm out doing photo shoots.
So real quick, where can they find your photography at? IG? Yeah.
So Instagram would be Matthew.Porter311. My Facebook page, I think, is just Matt Porter Photography. They can link up, I think on my page, Matt Porter, they can find my Facebook page. I had a better Instagram. It got hacked. I had to start over. So the following on that is low. I don't have, that many photos. I don't have a website. I had a website, whatever. Anyway, so that's down. I'm kind of a one-man operation. I can only do so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where it's at. So
I'll say this, Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, when I told Mike about it, we already were like, we need to have him on just to share your story. Definitely how you came from the negative to the positive. And now you finally did find your identity. You know what I'm saying? You found who you are and you continue to be, just pressing on with what's going on in life and everything else. And it just made you stronger. You know what I'm saying? To take all that negativity and still be able just to be confident enough to share your story, not even think back like, oh man, should I say something or anything like that? Like you're just straightforward with it now. And hopefully with this platform, we'll be able to at least share with other people that'll get to hear it and have something remind them that they can do the same thing that you did. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of time, if a lot of veterans think they're alone in this, they're isolated or whatnot, and that's not the case. Right. So thank you, my brother, man. I appreciate
and man,
you
like you
on.
said, if you're in the military, there's got to be support in the military. Just seek it out, ask around, talk to a chaplain, go to your local AA meeting. Do whatever you have to do so that you don't get put in a position where you're going to lose your career. It's not worth it. If you go looking for recovery, I promise you will find it. It's out there. I promise. And that's all I can say. You have to go look for it and just be open-minded and walk in there and just listen. That's all you got to do. Just listen to someone else's story and hear them out and just go for it. It's it.
Well, one of the things that I like about like hearing from everything you said so far, I think the biggest thing that for me, the biggest thing that I get out of it is, man, once you once you can say like the way it is, like you have two friends, right? You have one friend that tells you, hey, you don't drink enough, and you have a friend that tells you drink too much. But there's nobody there that's in there saying, you know what, I don't want to drink either like you. Like there's nobody in there. So that was my biggest takeaway from what you're saying is like you found a group of individuals that you could actually say, you know what, I don't want to drink either. And that there's always those two camps, but there's no one like that wants to do what you want to do. And so I think that's a bigger thing when people are saying, hey, I'm tired of drinking. There are a group of people. It can be whatever you want it to be, but there is a group of people that don't want to drink either. They know it's bad for them. I mean, everyone knows it's bad for them, but I think they just don't find those people that is right in the middle for them, what they need to hear. Hey, I don't want to drink either. Let's figure out how not to drink, right? Like we get so caught up on, hey, you drink too much. Hey, you don't drink, or you're not that bad, or, whatever, but it's never, how do you not drink what you want to do? Or, you know what I mean? How do you just,
well, that's the problem. When you get around those people, it's all about pointing fingers, right? It's like, no, it's not me. It's you, you do this wrong and you do that wrong. And that's what I used to hate, man. When I'd get in a group of people and those questions, especially after the military, the questions they're not pointed at other people, right? Then they turn to you and they're like, hey, Matt, what's up with it? What are you doing? What's the last good thing you did? And then you start really looking at like what you're doing with your life. My problem is when I moved to Oklahoma, short story, when I moved to Oklahoma with my buddy Ryan, we met a new group of friends, right? You're in a new place, new group of friends. We were at a party one night and we're drinking and we're telling the same stories that we were telling back in Las Vegas. And I told my mom one day, I said, we're telling the same stories, right? There's no new stories. We're rehashing the past with these new friends. We're not doing anything, right? We're just telling the same old stories. And it was like, it's just the same old story, but you're just in a different crowd of people, and it's the same thing. And when you get around it, like they said, misery loves company. You get around a group of people and you start talking shit about each other. Everyone will start talking shit about each other. But when you really start looking at how to help people, no one wants to turn the spotlight on them because then they're going to understand what their insecurities are and what they're not doing or what they want to be doing or then you start to really internalize it and you're like, you know what? Fuck, I don't want to be around any of these guys because it's too productive, right? And you're not doing enough and then you get insecurities. And then that's like Israel, you said, how many friends did you have? I didn't have any, right? They all were doing their own thing. They all had families, jobs. I was by myself trying to figure it out. You don't have anyone to call, it's you're talking to yourself, and so that was, I'm looking in the mirror, right? I'm looking in the mirror, trying to find the answers at myself. That's all you're left with is yourself. So anyway,
that's dope though. I mean, like, a lot of the things that we have going on, if we just look ourselves in the mirror and we have reflection, you sit there and say, I'm messing up here. It's like we have the ability to be our own life coach. We know exactly what we're doing wrong. We know, like, it's like when someone's like overweight and there's like, hey, how do I eat right? They know the answer, right? We know those answers, but are we going to really sit down and kind of like diagnose ourselves? Like, like David Goggins always talks about the live autopsy. Are we going to really dissect ourselves and be like, you know what, I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing that wrong. Hey, I'm doing those things, and what I found from my own story of how I talk about how like I have a drinking problem and it's no shame at all. It's the same situation that I hear from you when you told them, hey, look, I got kicked out of the military for this, is once you process that information and you own that, hey, I messed up, and you can tell yourself that, telling other people is easiest because you've already dealt with the hardest critic you have.
Right.
Because, like you said, when people talk to you about your service and you put your head down, that's a real situation that they don't understand. A lot of people have gone through this situation where, they're like, hey, thank you for this. You're like, man, I had this kind of job, man. I wasn't that guy. Or, hey, I didn't deploy. Or, hey, I only deployed here. I mean, there's so many different things because what people think in the military is, like Jarhead or, a movie. And it was like, that was like maybe 1% of it. Most of the time we're partying, having a good time. Like when everybody always asks me about Honduras, I'm always like, it was like, I always feel like that was the oldest, like old school military. We drank. We were like in PT, we're like swaying because we're drunk. We smell like alcohol and nobody cared. It was normal. It was like a Tuesday and it was great.
That's like when people are like, you got deployed for 9/11. They're like, where did you go? And I'm like, Diego Garcia. And they're like, what did you do? And I'm like, we drank beer and we deep sea fished. Like that's what we did. You know what I mean? Like there's no, I can't lie. I'm like, did we see combat? No. Were we far away from home? Yes. Like, it's whatever, you know. Yeah. But that's the truth, man. And it, you know, it's just people just have this idea of what it is, you know, and it's just different. But I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's amazing that you can talk to the story because, you know, when you're 18 years in, 5 months in, you know, throughout your story you've been in, there's somebody who's at that benchmark right now. There's somebody who's at 1 month and happy as can be, and 18 years is too far to think about. And I think that's why it's like, hey, at least for 24 hours, I know this. Yeah. And that's, you know, once you get enough of those 24 hours, you know, the future looks a lot brighter because your history has already shown you that you can survive 24. So you know, you start doubling. Once you've done a year, you're starting to say, hey, man, I know I could do it another year at least. You know, you start thinking those things. And I think that's the most powerful thing that people have a problem with any kind of addiction, any kind of mess you're in. You look at it too far in advance instead of looking from your feet and they're saying, I can make this next step. Okay, cool. Right. And sometimes that's really all that matters is that you can just make the next step forward. And then because you've done so much of those, you know, now, and the way to look at the best way to look at it is like, now that you've been sober for so long, for you to go on a bender and drink is like absurd. Like it's, you know, and that's what I want people to understand. Like you can get to a point where your character changes so much. The old you is like almost a joke anymore of like, I can't believe I used to be this guy because this new one.
And you know what's funny is I did a photo shoot 2 weeks ago and I'm with a female client. She's a singer. We're doing an album cover shoot. And she's like, okay, I want to get a picture of me at a bar, maybe getting a drink, like at the bar, whatever, you know, and she's got this whole idea in her head. And I'm like, okay. And so we're in her car and we're driving and she's like, so where are we going? She's like, let's go to a bar. And I'm like, shit, I don't know where a bar is. And I'm in my own neighborhood and I literally had to go to my phone and put bars near me and hit send because I'm like, I don't even know where to go. You know, it was crazy. And then I heard a guy say in a meeting, he said, you know, people will ask him, you know, how do you not drink? You know, like after all this time, how do you continue to like not drink? And he said, man, he goes, alcohol is none of my business. Drugs are none of my business. And that's the truth. It's like, it's no longer my business. You know, I couldn't tell you where the drugs are, right? I don't know a drug dealer. I don't even know a bartender. Like, you know, it's none of your business. It's not on your radar. And it's once you're like in that direction, it's not in front of your face every day. You know what I mean? In the beginning it is, and you take it an hour at a time. And for me, it was a meeting at a time. I was doing 3 meetings a day just to get out of my head for that hour, just to do something new. So every day I don't wake up and go, oh my gosh, I can't drink today. I don't even think about it. Now, if we got a concert coming up and we go to a concert, do I have to remind myself that I don't drink? Of course, right? Because you're in the moment, you're good to go, and it's like everyone's having a good time, and someone might pass a joint to you, you know, and you got to be ready to like take it and be like, and pass that on. You know, it's not you, you know. So it's anyway, it's not something that you deal with every day. And like I said, once you make it completely different, it's none of your business. You know, I don't know anything about that because it's not on my to-do list today.
Right. That's right. Listeners and viewers, it's none of your business. Thank you again, my brother, man. I appreciate you coming on, man, again, sharing your story. It's a beautiful thing how far you have gone and overcome and everything else to the position that you're in now. And again, I'm glad that you were willing to come on and share that story. So thank you again, my brother. Much love.
Yep. Not a problem.